Hi guys! So today I'm going to be showing you one of my favorite recipes for cranberries. Last year I made this with wild cranberries. Unfortunately this year I missed the cranberry harvest, but luckily I managed to find some fresh ones at the store, and so that's what we're going to be using today. So we've got a bowl on top of our scale, and that way we can measure out the amount of ingredients we're putting in. Sometimes I just kind of throw them in, but this year I thought I would measure so that I could write this down. So we've got about 140 grams of cranberries. We're going to add in a little bit of cranberry sauce that was left over, and I think this will be nice because it'll add some moisture to this. I'm going to add the juice of an orange. We zested the orange because we're going to use the zest as well. All right. We have the zest of the orange, and we're going to add some spruce needles. Now, before we do this, we're going to weigh out the zest because the spruce needles will be much harder to weigh. So we've got 14 grams of orange zest here, and we're going to add 2 tablespoons of white sugar. The reason we're putting sugar here is so that the sugar absorbs the oil from the zest. Maybe just a little more, tablespoon and a smidge. Zest from the orange rind, and it doesn't end up going in cutting board. So this is 45 grams of candied young spruce. We're all going to get chopped together. So now that that is an appropriate size, we're going to add this to the cranberry mixture. To it, we're going to be adding in a little bit of spice bush flowers and twigs preserved in sugar. I'm going to do, let's see, we're going to weigh this out so we know how much we're putting in. 21 grams, 22 grams, 21. Last, but certainly not least, in fact, the most important part, everybody gets mixed together. And the cranberries are a little solid, and so is this big clump of sugar. So I think what I'm going to do is get marble rolling pin and just let this use the weight to kind of brutalize these cranberries so that all the flavors incorporate a little more easily. Clean off the end. And now this is going to macerate for several hours until it becomes very fragrant. While we wait for our berries to macerate, we're going to make our crust. And so I had a little extra flour from a previous project that I was using to dust the counter that I saved and put in this bowl. And to it, we're going to add 240 grams of flour. I think will be enough for this. To the 240 grams. So to the flour, we're going to add 160 grams of tallow, because we're doing a 3-2-1 crust, so that'll be 3 parts flour, 2 parts fat, 1 part water. 64, 98, 132, 54, 56. Yeah, that's close enough. Add in 80 grams of water. A little extra water, we had a little less fat, no worries. Pie crust is usually pretty forgiving that way. And so now comes the fun part. Take it off your scale, choose your favorite hand, and just squeeze everything together. Make sure any giant pieces of fat get broken up. And don't be afraid to rip this apart. We don't want a lot of gluten developing. We're just squeezing and pressing it together instead of bread, which gets kneaded. And so this is just about done. Clean my hands off really quick. And form it into a cohesive mass. And then let this chill out until it feels firm and is a little stuck to the bowl. Usually half an hour in the refrigerator. So we're just about ready to plate up our cranberry mixture. So we're going to put in a tablespoon of duck fat and just a little flour to help it all stick together. Perfect. Now we are going to flour our counter and roll out the pie crust. Make sure it's nice and well floured or it's going to stick. And just gradually increase the diameter of the circle, flipping it over each time you turn it. Be sure to continue to dust well with flour or it's going to get stuck. If pieces come off, you can just stick them right back on the top. No problem, no worries. As long as you keep it nice and floured, you will have no problems with this crust. Just feeling now to see the general thickness, and it looks like it's about sized for our pie plate. So now let me get my bench scraper just to help me get started here, and flip it over the rolling pin. Cool. And now you just want to scooch it down into the corners gently. There we go. And we're going to curl up the edge. We're going to crimp it in a moment. But we want to kind of just get it off the countertop so that it doesn't rip when we move the plate. There we go. I usually do this little 4-finger pinch design for my pie crust, but if you like to crimp it a different way, please feel free. I just think this is easier for my bigger hands, and I like the way it looks. Nice and homemade, nothing too wild and crazy. And there we go. Now we're going to take the entire contents of this bowl and scrape it out really good. And spread it around the bottom of the bowl. I really like the flavor of pine and cranberry, and so what I'm doing now is decorating the top of this tart, or I guess open-faced pie, with candied pine cones. So these are from last year that I picked, and I got quite a lot of them. And so this is something I wanted to try and see how they come out when they're cooked like this, because they're nice and soft and very squishy, almost like a gummy bear kind of texture, but not quite so chewy. And so what I'm doing right now is just taking the candied cones and kind of standing them up in the middle so they look a little more interesting that way, and they look like pine cones coming right out of the cranberries. And I think we're maybe going to put some spruce needles in here as well, and really like celebrate some flavors of winter, like the cranberry and the spruce, both of which would be available all winter long, especially if you preserve them right. So this one got a little. And we're going to take the syrup from the pine cones and pour that in here as well. There we go. These are the candied spruce needles, and I'm going to see if I can get them across the top looking nice. And one more. I think that's gorgeous. Let's see what it looks like when it's done. Right. So our cranberry, spruce, and pine cone tart is done. You can see the filling is nice and bubbly, the top looks nice and shiny, and the pastry on the edges is well cooked. So this is going to come out of the oven and cool for a while before we cut into it. So we're just adding the final little bit of garnish, which are some candied male pitch pine cones, to the top of this ice cream. And now for the best part. Oh my God. It tastes like ice cream and sprinkles and Christmas and like my childhood all rolled up into one, and I'm definitely making this for Christmas next year. This might be one of the best things I've ever made. Go cook with some pine cones. It's good for you. Happy foraging.